Hi guys, it's Nat here. Hope you're all doing well. As promised, today I'm going to show you how I sewed the signatures in and then put the cover together of my mushroom journal. So I've got my 3 signatures there and I have all the ephemera still in my signatures. I've also got the front and back cover. Now I did show you how I put the front cover together in a previous video, which I'll link below. All I've done is added the strip of fabric for the closure since then. So I leave all the ephemera in the signatures so I can tell how fat they're going to be. And then I put the covers on the bottom and the top of the signatures. And then I'm grabbing a ruler and I'm measuring how high the stack is. I'm not pressing down much at all on it. And that way, you know, it will sit nicely, hopefully, when I'm finished. So it works out to be about 6 centimetres where I want the distance between my covers. So I'm measuring that 6 centimetres on the inside of my bits of fabric there. And I'm just putting a pencil line where the 6 centimetres is. I had no idea what I was doing, so I went so slow. I did edit a bit out because I did a lot of thinking. So I'm just checking that there's enough overhang there from the line on the back cover so that when I stick it, it's got enough there to hold it. So I'm just applying my fabric glue. That's the Helmars fabric glue that I'm using where I think I am going to stick my fabric. And then I'm just putting the line that we drew up against the back cover there. And then folding the fabric over to stick it down. Then I do the same with my other flap of fabric. Put some glue down. Then align the line on the fabric with the back of my cover. So now I want to let that glue dry really well before I put my eyelets in like we did on the front cover. So I'll get on with measuring out where I want my signatures while we wait for the glue to dry. So I double check the distance that we've got left of the fabric there for our spine, and it works out again to be about the 6 centimetres, which is very handy for measuring where I want my signatures. And I'm using a pen to put the dots where I want to sew my signatures through. So of course, if I've got 3 signatures, we want the middle one in at 3 centimetres, bang in the middle. And I'm just eyeballing the distance where I'm going to put the holes from the top and the bottom of the fabric piece there. We want 2 holes in each piece of fabric. I'm doing a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. There'll be one in the middle that's sewn through the signatures, but not any fabric. So again, with the bottom piece, I measure where the 3 centimetres is, and I put a dot up the top there and a dot down the bottom. I put them away from the edge a bit, you know, so that if the edge frays a little bit, it's still going to be quite secure. That's why I did the zigzag stitching around to try and prevent too much fraying. So now we're going to measure where we want to put our other 2 signatures. So you've always got to think that the pages want to expand either side of the middle of the signature. So if we put one at 1 centimetre, we've got a centimetre to the left and a centimetre to the right for the pages to expand. And then if we put another dot at the 5 centimetre mark, we've got a centimetre either side for the pages to expand as well. So I add the dots at the bottom and the top at the 1 centimetre and 5 centimetre mark. So that way I've got the 6 centimetres in total, and I've got signatures that will be stitched in at 1 centimetre, 3 centimetre and 5 centimetre. So I do the same measurements down the bottom there. So I've got a piece of paper there, just some scrap paper, and I am measuring it against the cover to get it the same length as the cover, and this is going to be the paper that we make a template out of to punch the holes in our signatures. So I fold it over in the middle, and then I fold it back on itself to get the plain paper, which I should have just folded it like that in the first place, but you know, it's me. So I've got my cutting board just so I can put the tops of my covers up against a line to make sure they're even. I'm putting my paper up against the dots in the middle, and I'm just making a mark where they are on the middle of my paper there, because that's where we're going to have to punch the holes in our signature. I completely forget to do the middle hole, but that's all right. It's an easy fix. So then I fold it over the other way so the dots are in the middle. So now that the glue's all dry, we can punch the holes for our eyelets. So just put the covers together like that so that I can sort of roughly measure where I put the ones on the front cover and do the ones on the back around the same. The ones on the front are a bit crooked and that anyway, they're not really in line, but that's all right. I'll just put a little dot where I want to punch them. And I use my crocodile to punch the holes. Well, the first two anyway. I try to do the other two holes, but it's quite awkward to get my crocodile in there well enough in between the fabric. So just I could have done it, but I thought it would just be easier to drag over my big bite. So if you do struggle, you know, you might have one of your little leather hole punches or something that might work just as well. So it's always worth having a few different hole punches around. If I see them at the second-hand shop, I grab them because oftentimes they do different sized holes. So I just punch the other two holes with my big bite. I must say that punched through the fabric a lot cleaner than what the handheld one did. So now I will set my eyelets, and like with the front cover, they don't go in, like you can't push them in the hole very easy because of the bulk of the fabric and that, so I sort of have to sit them on top, and that's why I found the big bite easier to set them with. They don't go through all the way completely, but once I've got all the eyelets in, I turn it over to the other side and then just give them a bit of a bang with my crocodile to flatten out the ends a bit. And they seem to be holding really well, so when I put the closure eyelets in, I actually added some of my Tiger Grip glue to them with a cotton tip. Just to really make sure it holds, because there'll be pressure put on the closure when I close it and that, so I definitely want the eyelets to stay in. So I grabbed the paper that we're using as our template and just check that our dots match up with the ones in the centre there. And I do put a T on the top there so we know which is the top and the bottom, which I forgot to do beforehand. And I'll fold it back so that the dots are in the centre. You make sure all your pages are where you want them and all together nicely and even, and then you slip your little template in the middle there. Now the template's a little bit longer because the covers are a bit longer than the signature, but I just make sure there's an even amount of the template sticking up the top and out the bottom as well. I just use my bone folder to sort of push down in the middle to make sure all the pages are together nicely. Then I grab my big clips and I clip on the bottom of the one side there and the top of the other side just to hold the pages together. It makes it a lot easier to punch the holes and get your cotton through because you don't want your pages moving around. So we've got our template in there now with our dots on where we want to punch the holes, except for the middle one. This is where I realise, oh, I forgot to do a middle one, but that's easy. It's a little signature and I can eyeball where I want the middle. And I'll just put a hole in there and then the holes in there for the other signatures and it will be in the same spot. So I'm just going through with my awl now and pushing a hole in where we've put our dots. I've got a book, a cradle there, and I got that from Which Craft Do You Do. They sell them. They make them and sell them, and they're very handy for punching your holes. And I just put my cutting mat underneath in case my awl goes all the way down to my desk. So there you see I've got no dot, but I'm sort of just eyeballing where it's centre in the signature from the other holes. So the next thing you want to remember to do is take your template out. I cannot tell you, especially when I started, how many times I'd start sewing the template in. And then you've got to either undo your stitching to take it out or you've got to rip it out. And because I have 2 more signatures to punch, I don't want to rip it up. So remember to take that out. I like to put my clip ends down like that or else my cotton gets caught on them when I'm trying to sew the signature in. I check that my holes are sort of aligned in the centre because oftentimes I do go off centre with the outside pages, which upsets me when that happens. Now I'm using embroidery thread, which can be a little difficult. And what I do is measure about 3 lengths or just over of the height of my signature. Now the embroidery thread has 6 strands, which can be a little problematic because it makes it very easy for it to catch on itself, which you will see as we go. But if you just be patient, I've learnt so much patience and perseverance through sewing in signatures. So I'm going to sew this in as the first signature, so it's in the first line of holes that we have. I'm taking it through the inside of the signature there, and I'm leaving a nice long tail. And then we've got no material to put it through, and I'm thinking, what am I meant to do with it? So I just put it to the other side, and we'll be going in from the back there in the first hole that goes up. But because I can't see it in the back there, I'm sticking my needle through to help show me where that hole is. With the other signatures, I did find it easy enough because I used to cross stitch to being able to bring my needle up in the right spot. But if you're not used to sewing, that can be hard. So I suggest you put it through where the dot is, and then you can sort of remember where it came through and put it through the back there. So I'm going in the back through the first hole in the bottom of that piece. And then I find the corresponding hole in my signature and I put it through the back there. It can be tricky, so I'm just wiggling the needle around a bit. Oftentimes I can't quite get it through, so I go through the middle and it just helps align the hole through all the papers again. And then when I go back through the back, it goes through nice and clean. So I don't pull it completely taut because I want to be able to see in between the fabric and the signature and that, but I take it up through the top hole and then find the top hole in the fabric, the top dot. Then we go back down to the previous hole once we've done that. You just check every now and again you've still got your tail hanging out. You don't want to lose that. So back down to the previous hole. Now this is where it can become problematic because this is where you can catch the thread that's already there. And if you do that, you'll want to unhook it before you go further, or else you'll have trouble tightening up your thread. So you take it back through the signature as well. Just wiggling around a little bit to find where the hole is. It's hard when you've got like your signatures loaded with, or your pockets and that as well. All the bulk makes it difficult. So I pull it through and then I sort of pull up both the threads that are in that hole. That's why I like to not tighten it up too much as well, because that way it enables me to see if and where I've got it hooked through one of the stitches. And the easiest way I find to undo that is to take your needle off of the thread and then to unhook it. You can see there that it's caught on the other one, but that's because, yeah, this thread does have 6 threads, the embroidery thread. It's a lot easier if you've just got a cotton that only has 1 thread or whatever. It doesn't tend to get caught too much, but I wanted to use this, and yeah. And you just be patient. So I've unhooked that now, so I've just got to put the needle back onto my thread. So a bit tedious, but I wanted to show you that, you do have these problems and that, but you just got to be patient and work through them. So now we skip the middle hole and we go down to the top hole that's in that bottom piece of fabric. So again, through the signature. And through the corresponding hole in the fabric. Then we can take it down to the bottom dot on our fabric. Again, I'm going through from the inside just to see where my needle comes out on the back, and then I can remember that to put it back through the back there. Then through the bottom hole in the signature. So I'm just showing you the one signature because you go ahead and do the other signatures the same. It is fiddly because you've already got one in there, so you've sort of got to move around that while you're putting the next one in. But yeah, a few swear words and a few deep breaths and you get there in the end. You just go slow, you make sure you unhook any stitches that you get hooked up. I find that double checking and triple checking everything is good. So you go back up through the previous hole there. Again, this is where it gets problematic with catching stitches. So you double check when you pull it through that it's not caught on the other stitch. Oftentimes, if you just pull the stitches, you can sort of feel if they're making each other move, and if so, you know you've caught them. That's what I'm doing here, is just pulling both the stitches out a bit to check if they're caught. And then back through the corresponding hole in the fabric. Again, checking that I haven't caught the stitches. And then we can go back through the middle now. I almost always get it caught when I go back through the middle. If I've got a multi-stranded cotton. So pulling both the stitches to see if and where I've got it caught. I take the needle off the thread and I use that to help me pull the stitch loose of the other one. My eyesight's not the best these days, as is anyone's when we start aging, but yeah, I find it eventually. Then you want to put one of the ends under that middle stitch there, so that you've got one of the ends either side of the middle stitch. And that way when you tie the knot, it doesn't get pulled back through the hole, because the middle stitch will hold it out of the hole. So I'm just lifting the stitch and putting one of the ends under. And then at this stage you want to start tightening up your stitches. So I find with the 5-hole pamphlet stitch, if you pull on the top and bottom stitch, you pull the top from the top and you pull the bottom one from the bottom, that will help you tighten up that middle stitch. And then you can pull your ends to tighten up the top and the bottom stitches. So you want to be sort of gentle, firm but gentle in doing this. You don't want to rip your pages at all or break your threads or anything. So you just go careful and do it a couple of times. And you just check like the back of the book and make sure that your stitches on the back of your spine are getting taut. So now I'll check the back of the spine and just see how taut these stitches are. And if you find sort of too much looseness in them, you know you need to do some tightening up. It's also good to take your clips off. Well, you've got to take them off at some time, Nat. But if you take them off, you can flick through your pages and make sure that there's no loops of your thread anywhere that have been caught, and that all looks good. So back into the middle, tend to do a final tightening up. So again, I grab the top stitch and pull it from the top, the bottom stitch, pull it from the bottom, and you'll see a bit of slack there. And then if you pull those middle stitches, you'll see that slack get tightened up. So then I usually check that the back's taut, the middle's taut, and if that all feels good, I can tie my double knot. As I said, it is worth double checking or triple checking everything numerous times. I'm a bit anal like that, but I tell you the amount of times I've made mistakes with this and had to undo it all and re-sew it, and that is so frustrating. So I rather double check as I go. So that's how you do your signatures. And then I just flick through to see how it's sitting, sort of, because I've never done it with the fabric like this before and I want to see what it's like. Then you, yeah, just do the same for your other two signatures and it's all put together then.